We got the fully assembled Golga Build-A-Figure from this Monday Night War wave. It's the only reason for me to really get the wave. I do like the Booker T figure, but the main reason was getting to add a whole new wrestler, a whole new character to my Attitude Era collection of this time period. We got Golga here. I'll say even assembling him, he feels very light, like the torso or something is hollow. You'd think a big figure like this would feel heavy. It's really light. I don't know if that's good or bad. Maybe bad just because it'd be easier to keep him on the shelf standing up with a little weight maybe. He's nice and big in size. It's not just a plain torso, it kind of has these folds like the shirt is kind of like rumpled up. I think it probably would have been smarter to do the cloth because he never had like a tuck-in shirt. It was always like hanging down, kind of made him look more disheveled and stuff because with the gimmick that he was like in the oddities. He was supposed to be like some kind of disfigured circus freak. He's got like the sweatpants and stuff. It was just kind of like he was almost like a simpleton, but he's also supposed to be deformed. I don't know if you kind of notice on the side here these weird bumps. He'd wear that under the mask to try to like show that he was deformed underneath the mask while he was wearing the mask. I think they wanted like one big huge bump sticking out or something, but they just couldn't do it costume wise, so yeah, they just had this little patch of like smaller ones that you could see through. I feel like that was a point lost like very early on with Golga. Nobody cared about that part of the disfigurement, just that he had to wear a mask like this. I think some stories about the concept of Kane, they probably would have went with something like this, like a very plain leather mask, you know, like something more realistic that you see in like movies. So I almost feel like this is like a recycled bit off of Kane in some way. Have a more simple, like leathery mask. This is kind of like a fairly standard looking like lucha libre mask, you know, laces in the back, and then that mesh that lets the performer, you know, inside see out of the hole, but you can't see in, seeing their face or their eyes. Makes him kind of look like a creepy, hollow kind of look. Got like the nose hole and stuff, so it's really coolly detailed that they actually went out of the way to do the bumps instead of just smoothed over. This is the kind of character I like to see in this line, like stuff that we'd only really get very specific to this time period. I don't get excited for The Rock in his purple tights, and blue tights, and red tights, and green tights, and gold tights. Gets a little old. I want to see new characters and stuff, because my memories aren't just sitting there waiting for the main event stuff to happen. I'd like to see the whole show. I'd watch like the Sunday Night Heat and anything else I could watch where you'd see other wrestlers and stuff. Maybe Golga having a few more matches there. Again, the packaging has a date for a Raw episode, but it's kind of weird because they did pre-tapes, so it's kind of, I can't figure out exactly what it is. Seems like it was just a segment where the headbangers attacked the oddities and no match happened. So nothing really that significant, so I don't know why. I don't know who's picking these dates, but they could have just picked his debut or something like that. I don't know. Weird choices on the dates on these packages. So of course, the real secret, you know, under the mask, he's really Earthquake, John Tenta under there. That's what this black strip is about. He would like cover his like tattoos so it wasn't so obvious who it was to everybody. So that's a cool detail they threw on the figure here. That underneath the sleeve was supposed to be like this. That's where like the cloth white shirt would have been cooler because you would have saw underneath here the black covering more. I feel like he was pretty like over with people. I think they were pretty excited to see him. Of course, he did the Cartman thing, so usually is wearing like a shirt like from South Park or something like that. Here we just have plain. He did start out just kind of in plain, dirty looking kind of clothes. But they didn't do like a brand crossover back then, and they didn't do it now either. I don't know why it's just constantly like, I don't know. I'm sure it was something with money or whatever, but it just seems like it would have been a win-win. Like, hey, can we print the freaking old Cartman beefcake shirt on the figure? And they just might have just said, yeah, whatever. But, you know, these companies have the lawyers and they got to be like, well, this is an opportunity to get some money. Like, well, calm down. It just would have been a nice little thing to do, but, you know, we can't have nice things anymore, so. And then he was also reasonably popular just because the oddities, and they had their Insane Clown Posse music eventually that they got, and the Insane Clown Posse coming out with them, actually, because they got really into wrestling. Back then, they were even, you know, trained to do wrestling stuff. So they did start out in WWF before going to WCW and being with, like, Vampiro over there. And it really was, like, brilliant. You had, like, the circus oddities and then the Insane Clown Posse. They were, like, the clowns of the circus. Like, it was a perfect, like, little group. So naturally, I'd like to see some figure company, you know, obviously Mattel and WB probably aren't going to tackle Insane Clown Posse figures, but I could see it happening somewhere, getting really good, like this scale and stuff would be cool. And then, you know, of course, Kurgan, Silva, and then Luna even. And I think George the Animal Steel was in here at some point for a little bit. But Kurgan was actually in the WWF Attitude game that I had the somewhat misfortune of having. It plays terribly. I hate the wrestling in the game, but what was awesome is that all the wrestlers had like their music, so it was more fun to see the entrances or just hear the music on there. It was kind of hard to get music back then because it was pretty early internet. So one of the songs on there, since Kurgan was in the game, you had the Oddities music. So it was pretty easy to use the old Create a Wrestler mode, make Golga, since he has such a simple kind of lucha libre styled mask. You'd pick the mesh and it just has plain, pretty standard clothing options that are in the game. So that's one of the first Create a Wrestler mode where I made a real wrestler and could give him his music and stuff, and he fit in the game pretty well. For, you know, the 2 or 3 times I had him in a tag match and then never played as him again. But it was cool to see him do the entrance, you know, with the real music and kind of dancing around. Like, playing the games in between the weeks of seeing the shows was really important back then, especially getting to play with your friends and stuff. So not in the game, but he was in our version if you wanted him. I always like seeing him on TV, and it's awesome to get like a figure of him, especially since I actually did some extra work for some of the details. I just think it's funny that a lot of people just be like, oh, he's just a jobber character on the show, nobody cares, I'm just gonna throw him in my thing. But I'm gonna go out of my way and get a tiny little Eric Cartman toy and do all this stuff to add to him, because I gotta pimp out my collection, even the wrestlers that I don't care about. Like, wow, okay, you do that, dog. If I did see one, like something like the scale, that'd be cool, I guess, but I'm not gonna go out of my way and get like logos and customize. I just like the real release to remember that they cared. They really cared, and they made Golga. He was the Build-A-Figure, but at least we got an extra character. I want to see some more Oddities in some way, because that was a pretty memorable group and stuff back then, and the early Attitude. And I kind of like the idea of like the old legends like having some way to be on like the show still, if they can still wrestle like that. I kind of have a thing for that, like the old legends still wrestling. I don't know why that idea always appeals to me, but something like Jericho fighting the legends at WrestleMania like that against like Ricky Steamboat, stuff like that always appealed to me. So, you know, kind of finding out like the secret, you know, on the schoolyard, school lunchroom, you know, that was like, that's Earthquake, and we'd seen old tapes like that. It was just kind of a cool extra thing you could learn, you know, probably by the time he was like done with it, but since we'd watch old pay-per-views, you know, him like fighting Kai and Tai and stuff like that, just for really fun matches to see. This was the main reason I got this wave of the Monday Night War, because I was like, heck yes, they actually did Golga. So I'm pretty sure the Kane came with the head, Booker T came with the arms. They do have alternate hands. These are open hands, and he has fists too. Bulldog and Hack coming with the torso and legs. This is what I like to see. This is the kind, and this is the only time period I really collect, is that like later 90s Monday Night War time period. I collect WCW and WWF that they make with these Mattel figures. So if you want to see what I find worthy to add to my collection, this is the place to be. Get subscribed and check out the next video here.